The date is August 29, 1992, and the air in London is electric, a tangible current of anticipation and joy. It hums through the city's veins and converges on a single iconic point. Wembley Stadium. Over 78,000 souls are packed into this cathedral of sport, their voices a deafening, unified roar. They are here for one reason, and one reason only: to see their hero, their very own British Bulldog, come home. He stands in the ring, a colossus of muscle and granite, his physique a testament to years of brutal, unforgiving training. His opponent is Bret the Hitman Hart, the reigning Intercontinental Champion, a technical wizard who moves with the precision of a surgeon. But tonight, he is not the hero. He is the interloper, the foreign champion standing in the Bulldog's path. Stadium, a collective gasp and groan that echoes the hopes and fears of an entire nation. The match is a masterpiece of storytelling, a ballet of power versus precision, brute force against cunning. And then the moment arrives, on the Intercontinental Championship in front of his people. The image of the two men, their shared history and respect visible in the post-match embrace, is more than just a picture. It's the very definition. 29 years old, holding one of the most prestigious titles in the World Wrestling Federation, and the undisputed king of his country. The trajectory seemed clear, a gilded path leading directly to a shot at the Federation Championship itself. He was at his physical peak, a bona fide main event star whose rise had fully come to fruition. Yet what those 78,000 screaming fans didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that this crowning achievement was also the beginning of the end. Within 3 short months, this glorious chapter would slam shut. The British Bulldog, the hero of Wembley, would be gone from the company, unceremoniously fired. The question is, why? How does a man at the absolute zenith of his career, a national hero who just sold out a stadium, find himself on the unemployment line? The reason, as is so often the case in the shadowy, unforgiving world of professional wrestling, is far more complex and tragic than a simple loss. It's a story of ambition, deceit, and a brutal, almost clinical calculation by a man who saw wrestlers not as heroes or people, but as assets to be used, and if necessary, discarded. This is the story of how the British Bulldog was fired at his peak, and how that decision, perhaps more than any other, set him on a tragic path to a premature end. Davy Boy Smith's journey began not in North America, but in the working-class town of Golborne, England. A natural athlete, he began training at just 13 and cut his teeth in the no-nonsense environment of the television program World of Sport. He was scouted by the legendary Stu Hart and brought to Calgary to train in the Hart family dungeon. It was there he began his celebrated tag team partnership with his cousin, the explosive Dynamite Kid. As the British Bulldogs, they revolutionized tag team wrestling with a blend of high-flying acrobatics and hard-hitting power that was far ahead of its time. Their reputation caught the eye of Vince McMahon, who brought them to the World Wrestling Federation in the mid-1980s. With their eccentric manager, Lou Albano, they quickly became a fan favorite, winning the Tag Team Championship at WrestleMania 2. But their run was ultimately curtailed by backstage issues with other wrestlers, particularly the Rougeau brothers, creating a toxic environment that eventually led to their abrupt departure in 1988. After a troubled return to Canada and Japan, where personal issues and a serious car accident fractured their partnership, Smith made the decision to return to the Federation alone in 1990. His second run in the Federation was a slow and steady build. He was a popular mid-carder, a strong and reliable hand who consistently put on entertaining matches. His feud with the Warlord was a highlight, a true clash of titans. But it was his connection with the UK audience that truly set him apart. The Federation was gaining unprecedented popularity in Britain, and Smith, with his Union Jack ring gear and patriotic theme music, was its unofficial ambassador. He was a hero to millions, a larger-than-life representation of national pride. The company took notice, and the idea for a massive show in London was born. The annual SummerSlam event, typically held in a major American city, would for the first time in its history take place in the United Kingdom. The main event would be Bret Hart defending his Intercontinental Championship against the homegrown hero, the British Bulldog. The stage was set, and what happened next was the stuff of legend. The match itself, as recounted earlier, was a masterpiece, but what made it so compelling was the raw emotion behind it. Bret Hart would later reveal in his autobiography that the match was a logistical nightmare. Smith, he said, was not in the best shape leading up to the event, a consequence of substance use. It was Hart who, in a true act of professionalism, essentially called the match in the ring, guiding his visibly exhausted opponent to one of the most celebrated victories of all time, a moment of pure, unadulterated magic. Davey Boy Smith had arrived, and the cutthroat nature of the wrestling business was about to come crashing down. Unbeknownst to the fans, a storm was brewing. Vince McMahon was facing a federal investigation for steroid distribution, a scandal that threatened to tear down his entire empire. The pressure was immense, and the need for the Federation to project a clean image was paramount. It was in this environment that a bombshell dropped. According to Bret Hart, McMahon received information that two of his top stars, the Ultimate Warrior and Davey Boy Smith, were receiving illegal shipments of human growth hormone from a crooked pharmacist in England. For McMahon, who was desperately trying to distance himself from any hint of illegal drug use, this was an existential threat. In a business where loyalty is often a one-way street, the decision was made swiftly and ruthlessly. The British Bulldog and the Ultimate Warrior were both fired. The timing was staggering. Just 3 months after his career-defining victory, at the height of his popularity, Davey Boy Smith was a free agent. The argument could be made that Smith's entire SummerSlam main event push was a calculated financial play by McMahon. The Intercontinental Championship was a tool, the London show a cash grab. McMahon used him for the spectacle, for the money, and once the threat of the steroid scandal appeared, he discarded him without a second thought. It was a cold, pragmatic business decision. Davey Boy Smith, for all his talent and popularity, was a disposable asset. The firing sent Smith on a wandering path. He would find his way to World Championship Wrestling in 1993, but his tenure there was brief and plagued by issues. He returned home to England to wrestle for smaller promotions, but it was clear his destiny lay in the World Wrestling Federation. So, in August 1994, he made his surprise return at SummerSlam, walking back into the very company that had so unceremoniously fired him 2 years prior. His initial role was to be a supporting player in the family drama between his brothers-in-law Bret and Owen Hart. He was quickly thrust into the center of the ongoing feud, where he teamed with Bret against Owen and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. The family ties were the central pillar of his character, weaving him into the very fabric of the company's biggest ongoing narrative. Next came a dramatic showdown with Shawn Michaels at the 1995 Royal Rumble. In a finish that would become legendary, Smith and Michaels were the last two men standing. After a powerful clothesline, Smith celebrated, believing he had won, only for Michaels to re-enter the ring and eliminate him from behind. This moment, a perfect example of his ability to sell an angle, was a catalyst for a pivotal change. His time as a fan favorite was defined by his memorable tag team partnership with Lex Luger, forming the Allied Powers. While the team was short-lived, it solidified his position as an elite talent. Shortly after, the British Bulldog turned heel, a shocking and brilliant swerve that saw him attack his partner Diesel and align himself with the villainous manager, Jim Cornette. This marked a profound shift in his character, allowing him to tap into a more aggressive, calculating persona. He became a key member of Cornette's stable, Camp Cornette, which included Owen Hart and Yokozuna, and was once again feuding with his own family members. His subsequent championship match against Diesel at In Your House cemented him as a top-tier villain, and a memorable clash with Bret Hart 2 months later was another in a long list of compelling family battles. But the real highlight of this period was the formation of his tag team with Owen Hart. Despite their on-screen rivalry, the two were a perfect pairing, blending Owen's technical prowess and sly cheating with Bulldog's immense power. Their chemistry was undeniable, and they quickly became the tag team champions, holding the belts for an incredible 246 days. Their reign was marked by brilliant matches against teams like the Smoking Guns and the Legion of Doom. The culmination of this run came in 1997 with the reformation of the Hart Foundation. This was a powerful, cohesive stable that included Bret, Owen, Jim Neidhart, and Brian Pillman. The group brilliantly played on the real-life divide between American and Canadian fans, presenting themselves as pro-Canada heroes in their home country, while being reviled as anti-American villains in the United States. Bulldog, with his British patriotism, was a perfect fit for this international dynamic. The group held all the major championships at the same time. Bret had the Federation Championship, Owen the Intercontinental Championship, and Bulldog was crowned the very first European champion. This entire run, from 1994 to 1997, was a masterclass in how a wrestler can adapt and reinvent themselves. The British Bulldog went from a popular singles babyface to a cunning heel, a respected tag team champion, and a key member of one of the most compelling factions of the era. His work during this time, particularly with Owen Hart, proved that he was not just a one-off star, but a versatile and enduring talent. It all came to a head at the 1997 Survivor Series in Montreal, where the infamous Montreal Screwjob would ultimately lead to Bret, and by extension Smith and Neidhart, leaving the company once more. But this time it was by choice, a matter of principle in support of a family member, not a cold and calculated firing at his peak. Following this departure, Smith returned to World Championship Wrestling in late 1997. It was during this run that he suffered a much more serious, career-altering injury. During a match at Fall Brawl in 1998, he twice landed awkwardly on a trapdoor that had been set up under the ring for the Warrior's dramatic entrance. The result was a spinal infection that nearly paralyzed him and required a 6-month hospitalization. While recuperating, his contract was terminated, a cruel echo of his previous firings. He would make one final return to the Federation in 1999, but it was a shell of his former self, a character in a different era. He was a shadow of the man who main-evented Wembley, his body ravaged by years of abuse and his mind struggling with addiction to the very painkillers he had been prescribed to deal with his injuries. He was released once more, and though he would wrestle a few matches in smaller promotions, his career was effectively over. The tragic reality is that the story doesn't end there. Davey Boy Smith died on May 18, 2002, at the impossibly young age of 39. His death, a heart attack, was a direct consequence of the years of steroid and drug abuse that had taken a catastrophic toll on his body. He was, as Bret Hart so poignantly put it, a victim of his own choices, a consequence of the very habits that had led to his firing a decade earlier. But it's impossible to ignore the role of the wrestling industry itself. The pressure to maintain an impossible physique, the reliance on steroids and painkillers, and the culture of silence that surrounded it all. It was a vicious cycle that, in a dark twist of fate, cost him his career and, ultimately, his life. He was fired at his peak for a reason that, while bearing his own responsibility, was also a product of the very environment he was trying to succeed in. The fairy tale of Wembley, for all its glory, was a fleeting moment. A beautiful mirage on a path that led to a heartbreaking end. In the cold, hard reality of professional wrestling, even the most beloved heroes can be left behind. Their tragic story a cautionary tale of a world that values spectacle above all else. The date is January 19, 1991. The Miami Arena is a powder keg of electricity, the air thick with anticipation. It's the 4th ever Royal Rumble, and only 2 men remain. The crowd is a sea of bobbing heads, a deafening roar of 16,000 voices, but all eyes are on the ring. On one side stands Hulk Hogan, the seemingly immortal embodiment of the American dream, a red and yellow icon. On the other stands Earthquake, a mountain of a man who had, for nearly a year, been positioned as Hogan's greatest threat. This wasn't just a challenger, he was a force of nature, a monster meticulously crafted in the laboratory of Vince McMahon's imagination. With his enormous frame and a sit-down splash that often sent opponents to the hospital on a stretcher, Earthquake is the perfect foil for the superhero Hogan. He is the unstoppable object to Hogan's immovable force. And here, in the final moments of the Royal Rumble, Earthquake seems to have the advantage. He had brutalized and dominated every opponent in his path, moving with a chilling, purposeful swagger that belied his size. He has even managed to stand toe-to-toe with Hogan himself, a feat few others could claim. The tension was almost unbearable, but then, with a Herculean effort born of pure narrative necessity, Hogan body slams the giant before hitting him with a vicious clothesline, sending the 468-pound behemoth tumbling over the top rope. The arena erupted. Hogan had done it again. He had slayed the monster. In that moment, as Earthquake hit the floor with a thud that could be felt in every seat, something shifted. It was a symbolic elimination that marked both the pinnacle of his push and the beginning of a subtle, undeniable decline. Despite all the build-up, all the terror and destruction, the monster had been slain. And in the mercilessly forward-moving world of the Federation, a slain monster is a monster with an expiration date. Within 2 years, he would be gone, a ghost of the dominant force he once was. How did a man with such a promising start, with a gimmick so perfectly suited for the era, fade so quickly? The story of Earthquake is not just the story of a wrestler, it's a cautionary tale about the fleeting nature of wrestling stardom, the unforgiving hierarchy of a wrestling promotion, and the unpredictable whims of a creative mastermind named Vince McMahon. His journey to the World Wrestling Federation was as unlikely as it was fascinating. Born John Tenter in Surrey, British Columbia in 1963, he was a giant from the very beginning, a baby weighing over 11 pounds. Inspired by Canadian wrestling legends like Gene Kiniski, he found his calling early. He was a natural athlete, excelling in freestyle wrestling and even earning a scholarship to Louisiana State University. But it was a different path that would first bring him international attention: the ancient ritualistic world of sumo wrestling. Recruited to Japan, he embraced the strenuous lifestyle and traditions of the dojo, adopting the name Kototenta. In an impressive but brief 8-month career, he never lost a match, winning all 21 of his bouts. He was a comet streaking across the sumo sky. But the brutal physicality of the sport, the unforgiving nature of the ring, and the strict rules of the sumo world, including a prohibition on his beloved tiger tattoo, led him to make a fateful decision. He quit, leaving the sumo world with a perfect undefeated record, an unheard-of feat. He then seamlessly transitioned to professional wrestling in Japan under the tutelage of the legendary Giant Baba, a move that would ultimately put him on a collision course with destiny and the World Wrestling Federation. In late 1989, Tenta arrived in the company not as a superstar, but as a meticulously planned spectacle. Vince McMahon, with his incisive mind for character creation and theatrics, cast him in the perfect role. He made his television debut not in the ring, but in the audience, a random fan named John from West Virginia. During an in-ring challenge between Dino Bravo and the Ultimate Warrior, he was brought in to sit on their backs during a push-up contest. It was a classic pro wrestling ruse. With a signal from manager Jimmy Hart, John revealed his true nature, brutally attacking the Ultimate Warrior with his trademark sit-down splash. In an instant, the gentle giant was gone, replaced by the monstrous, menacing Earthquake. His rise was meteoric. With Jimmy Hart as his devious mouthpiece, Earthquake became a main event player almost overnight. He was the perfect vehicle for McMahon's theatrical narratives, a monstrous heel whose defining move was so visually impactful and seemingly devastating that it felt genuinely dangerous. His first major feud was with Hulk Hogan, the man he was literally designed to destroy. The rivalry began with a shocking and now iconic ambush on the Brother Love show, where Earthquake repeatedly crushed Hogan's ribs with his splash, sending Hogan into a kayfabe convalescence. For a few short months, it appeared that the monster was unstoppable, a genuine threat to the very foundations of Hulkamania. The feud culminated in a series of matches, including a count-out victory for Hogan at SummerSlam 1990. But the most telling moment came in that aforementioned 1991 Royal Rumble. That elimination, while a win for Hogan, was a loss for Earthquake's long-term momentum. The illusion was gone. The monster could be beaten. Following his rivalry with Hogan, Earthquake found a new target in Jake the Snake Roberts. This feud was darker, more visceral, and entirely emblematic of the savage, cartoonish brutality of the era. The most infamous moment was the Quakeburgers segment. After attacking Roberts and squashing his beloved Snake, Damien Earthquake appeared on Primetime Wrestling and, with a demented grin, cooked up snake burgers, gleefully serving them to an unsuspecting Bobby the Brain Heenan and Lord Alfred Hayes. It was a moment of shocking, heelish depravity that solidified Earthquake's place as a top villain. But as 1991 progressed, Earthquake's role began to subtly change. While still a dominant force, he was no longer positioned as a top-tier monster. He found a new purpose in the tag team division, forming a formidable and surprisingly beloved duo with his real-life friend, Fred Ottman, who was now wrestling as Typhoon. The two became the Natural Disasters, a team of colossal, lumbering giants who, managed by Jimmy Hart, initially terrorized the Federation's other tag teams. But the audience, ever perceptive, saw something in the two friendly giants, and when Jimmy Hart betrayed them to manage their new rivals, Money Inc., the Natural Disasters turned babyface. Their run as good guys was a revelation. Tenta, a man who, according to Bret Hart, was a quiet, gentle soul in real life who hated having to scare children as a heel, finally got to be himself. The cheers from the crowd, especially from the kids he once had to terrify, were genuinely meaningful to him. They would go on to win the Tag Team Championship, an achievement that cemented their place in the company's history and gave Tenta a championship run he never had as a singles star. But this new, friendlier, and less menacing version of Earthquake wasn't the same monster that had been built up to challenge Hulk Hogan. He was a gentle giant now, a different kind of character, and as a new generation of talent began to emerge, his time as a top-flight singles star was over. By early 1993, with the company in a state of transition, the Natural Disasters broke up, and Earthquake quietly left the company before making a surprise comeback in early 1994. He returned as a babyface and had a memorable feud with another former sumo, Yokozuna. The two men squared off in a sumo match on Monday Night Raw, a bizarre but entertaining spectacle that harkened back to Tenta's brief, undefeated career in Japan. Earthquake, despite his now smaller physique, won the match. It was a fleeting moment of glory, however. After suffering a storyline injury at the hands of Yokozuna and his ally Crush, Tenta once again vanished from the company. The monster was gone. His career, however, was not over quite yet. Like many wrestlers of the era, he found his way to World Championship Wrestling. There, he wrestled under a series of new names and gimmicks, first as Avalanche, then as the Shark, both of which felt like pale imitations of his former self. He joined the infamous Dungeon of Doom, a stable of theatrical monsters designed to feud with Hulk Hogan, a familiar role for Tenta. But this landscape was different. The Dungeon of Doom was a cartoonish stable in a company moving towards a more realistic aesthetic. Tenta, in a moment of a genuine feeling rebellion, dropped the gimmicks and began wrestling under his own name. In a powerful promo, he declared, "I'm not the Shark, I'm not a fish, I'm not an avalanche, I'm a man." It was a moment of clarity and truth in a world full of artifice. But like his Federation run, this was the same story of a great talent being misused. As the late 90s dawned, with the wrestling world caught in the throes of the rebellious Attitude Era, a significantly lighter Tenta made a return to the Federation, but not as the Earthquake the fans remembered. He was now Golga, a bizarre masked character with an obsession with the South Park character Eric Cartman. He was part of the Oddities, a faction of misfit, carnival-like wrestlers. It was a strange, almost humiliating turn for a man who had once main-evented against Hulk Hogan. The gimmick was a reflection of the company's new direction and Tenta's significant weight loss, which, from a storyline perspective, made it impossible to credibly present him as a colossal monster. After a short, forgettable run, the Oddities were dismantled, and Tenta was released. He made one final heartwarming appearance as Earthquake in the gimmick Battle Royal at WrestleMania 17. A moment of nostalgic joy for the fans who remembered his greatness. But the final chapter of his story is a tragic one. After a brief return to the independent circuit and a final run in Japan, he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. He fought the disease with courage and dignity, but in 2006, just 2 weeks shy of his 43rd birthday, John Tenta passed away. The story of Earthquake is a bittersweet symphony of triumph and tragedy. He was a character so brilliant in his conception that he threatened the very face of the company, a monster so dominant he was the only true foil for its biggest star. He was a tag team champion, a fan favorite, and a beloved figure backstage. But his story is also a testament to the fact that even the most dominant monsters are eventually made to fall. And in the world of professional wrestling, a monster who has been buried is a monster who will never truly be resurrected. The memory of that night in Miami, of the giant tumbling over the top rope, remains a poignant symbol of a career that shone so brightly before slowly, inexorably fading away. May he rest in peace. The date is November 26, 1987. A cool Thanksgiving night settles over Ohio, but inside the Richfield Coliseum, the atmosphere is anything but calm. The air crackles with the kind of electricity that only the World Wrestling Federation's golden era could generate. This isn't just a wrestling show, it's a spectacle, the main event and heart of the inaugural Survivor Series. On one side stands a mountain range of men led by the legendary Andre the Giant, a man so synonymous with villainy at this moment that his very presence draws a chorus of boos. On the other, the American icon, the red and yellow Thunderbolt, Hulk Hogan. But look closely at Hogan's team. Among the familiar faces, the slick-haired Paul Orndorff and the seasoned Don Muraco, stands a newcomer, a man unlike anyone the audience has ever seen. He is a walking, breathing masterpiece of the grotesque and the beautiful. Nearly 400 pounds of raw, coiled power. His bald head is a canvas for a swirling, intricate flame tattoo that seems to lick at his very soul, a visual testament to a volcanic, unpredictable spirit. This is Bam Bigelow, and he is about to step onto the grandest stage of them all. The audience, a mix of awe and trepidation, watches as he moves with an impossible agility for a man of his size. In this monumental main event, as titans like Hogan, Andre, and King Kong Bundy collide, Bigelow is the unheralded anchor. He weathers the storm, surviving an onslaught of muscle and fury. One by one, his teammates fall, until he is the last man standing for Hogan's team. He eliminates the hulking King Kong Bundy with a slingshot, then takes down the mountainous one-man gang, a feat that defies belief and earns the crowd's fervent respect. He ultimately succumbs to Andre the Giant, a legend in his own right, but the message has been sent. Bam Bigelow is a force to be reckoned with. He is a survivor, a spectacle, and for a fleeting moment, the future of the World Wrestling Federation. One could say he was almost synonymous with the company during this period. A larger-than-life character who headlined pay-per-views, including WrestleMania 11. And yet, for a career so deeply intertwined with the company's history, his name remains glaringly absent from the company's Hall of Fame. The question hangs in the air, a dark cloud over a legacy that burned so brightly. Why has this undeniable titan of the squared circle seemingly been blackballed? To understand the riddle of Bam Bigelow's absence, we must first trace the fiery path that led him to that fateful night in 1987. Born Scott Charles Bigelow in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, he was a physically gifted athlete from an early age, excelling in both high school football and wrestling. He was an imposing figure even in his youth, and after a brief, tumultuous period of working odd jobs, including a stint as a bounty hunter that ended with him being shot and imprisoned in Mexico, he found his true calling. He entered the legendary Monster Factory, a wrestling school run by Larry Sharp, who instantly recognized his unique potential. It wasn't just his immense size, it was his stunning athleticism and his ability to move with a speed that belied his frame. His early career was a whirlwind of success across various territories. He dominated in the Memphis-based Continental Wrestling Association, where he won his first championship and quickly established himself as a monstrous heel. He then moved on to the Texas-based World Class Championship Wrestling, where he briefly wrestled as Crusher Yurkov and captured the television championship. But it was in Japan, with New Japan Pro Wrestling, that he truly honed his craft and built his international reputation. Beginning in January 1987, he toured extensively with the promotion, a proving ground for some of the world's toughest wrestlers. He formed a fearsome tag team with Big Van Vader, known as Big, Bad and Dangerous, and together they eventually captured the Tag Team Championship. These tours were instrumental, solidifying his reputation as a legitimate, hard-hitting brawler who could work with anyone, from the agile to the immense. This reputation made him an irresistible prospect for Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation. When he debuted in the Federation in May 1987, he was immediately thrust into a high-profile storyline known as the Battle for Bam Bam, with every heel manager in the company clamoring for his services. This storyline, which was unprecedented for a newcomer, demonstrated the immense value McMahon saw in him. He was a natural face, and his eventual alignment with manager Oliver Humperdinck cemented his heroic status. The high point of this initial run was, of course, the 1987 Survivor Series, a moment that should have launched him into the stratosphere. He was a main event player from the start, a rare distinction for a man so new to the company. But this initial run was short-lived. A combination of persistent knee injuries and backstage friction, a sense of resentment from other wrestlers who believed he was getting too much of a push too quickly, led to his departure in July 1988. He would spend the next 4 years bouncing between promotions, including a run in Jim Crockett Promotions and tours of Japan and Mexico. But the pull of the World Wrestling Federation was strong, and he made his triumphant return in October 1992. This second run would become his most memorable and defining period. He came back as a heel, managed by the eccentric and gothic Luna Vachon, his main squeeze. Their partnership was captivating, a twisted, romantic vision of two misfits against the world. He was a dominant force, defeating the Big Boss Man at the Royal Rumble and entering a memorable feud with Bret Hart for the World Heavyweight Championship. He was a regular on Federation television and pay-per-views, including a run to the finals of the King of the Ring tournament, where he lost to Bret Hart in a classic encounter. But his most significant moment would come in 1995, and it's a moment that, perhaps more than any other, highlights the strange duality of his career. The company was looking for a new mainstream star to headline WrestleMania 11. They found him not in the wrestling world, but in the realm of professional football with Lawrence Taylor, the legendary New York Giants linebacker. The storyline was simple, yet brilliant. At the Royal Rumble, Bigelow, after a loss, exchanged words with Taylor at ringside. A scuffle ensued, and a challenge was made. The main event of WrestleMania 11 was set: Bam Bigelow versus Lawrence Taylor. This was a spectacle that transcended wrestling, drawing mainstream media attention from outlets including Sports Illustrated. For the match to work, it required an extraordinary professional, someone who could not only make Taylor look good, but also carry the entire weight of the match, a task that required impeccable ring psychology and an innate understanding of how to tell a story in the ring. Bam was that professional. He was a master of his craft, and he put Taylor over in a way that made the inexperienced football player look like a legitimate tough guy. He took the loss with grace and professionalism, cementing his reputation as one of the most reliable and trusted performers in the business. His role in this main event, a critical moment for the company, should have earned him a special place in the company's history. But a few months later, he was gone, becoming disillusioned with the backstage politics of the Clique, a group of powerful wrestlers who held significant creative sway. He would find a new home in Extreme Championship Wrestling, where his career would experience a second wind. He was a perfect fit for the company's gritty, no-holds-barred style. He won the World Heavyweight and World Television Championships. But his time there was also brief, as he was lured away by a lucrative contract with World Championship Wrestling in 1998, where he would go on to form the Jersey Triad with Diamond Dallas Page and Chris Kanyon, holding the World Tag Team Championship. His career, in a way, mirrors the tumultuous landscape of professional wrestling in the 1990s, a constant movement between promotions. He was a workhorse, a main eventer, a champion, and a fan favorite everywhere he went. And yet, the WWE Hall of Fame has remained closed to him. The question is why? The simplest and perhaps most cynical answer is that the WWE Hall of Fame is not a true Hall of Fame. It is an honorary distinction, a television spectacle, and a marketing tool. And in the eyes of the company, Bam Bigelow may not have checked enough of the right boxes. First and foremost, there is the lack of a major championship. While he held championships in other promotions, he never captured the Federation's World, Intercontinental, or Tag Team Championship. The Hall of Fame has always favored wrestlers who held the company's most prestigious titles. While this is not an absolute requirement, as many Hall of Famers have never held a top belt, it certainly helps a wrestler's case. Bigelow's role was often that of a dominant, upper mid-card heel who was used to get other faces over, as seen in his feuds with Bret Hart and Diesel. Second, his career was fragmented. He spent significant time away from the Federation in rival promotions. For a company that often seeks to portray itself as the singular home of professional wrestling history, celebrating a man who was arguably more successful outside their walls is not always a priority. The Hall of Fame is, at its core, a celebration of the company's own history and legacy. While Bigelow's time in the Federation was iconic, it was just a part of his overall story. Third, his personal history was complex and at times controversial. Bigelow had well-documented legal troubles and personal struggles, while he also had moments of incredible heroism, most notably when he saved several children from a burning building in 2000, suffering second-degree burns in the process. The darker parts of his life may have made the company hesitant to celebrate his memory. The WWE is part of a publicly traded company that is extremely protective of its image, and a checkered past, no matter how balanced by moments of greatness, can be a non-starter. Fourth, there is the matter of timing and advocacy. Bam Bigelow died prematurely in 2007 at the age of 45. While many Hall of Famers are inducted posthumously, the process often requires a strong advocate, someone within the company with enough influence to champion a wrestler's case. It is unclear if Bigelow had any high-profile friends or allies within the company actively lobbying for his induction, a key factor in the selection process. Without a vocal champion, a wrestler's legacy can fade into the background, overshadowed by those who have powerful friends to keep their name in the conversation. Finally, there is simply the selection bias of the Hall of Fame itself. The list of omissions is long and filled with names of men who are cult favorites or who were overshadowed by the biggest stars of their era. Bam Bigelow was, without a doubt, a star. But his era was dominated by larger-than-life figures like Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and The Undertaker. He may have simply been a victim of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, his star shining brightly but not quite as bright as the solar systems around him. The mystery of Bam Bigelow's absence from the Hall of Fame is not really a mystery at all. It is a calculated decision, a reflection of the priorities and biases of a corporate entity. The Hall of Fame is not a meritocracy. It is a carefully curated pantheon, a monument to a company's own history and marketing strategy. Bam Bigelow was the quintessential sports entertainer, and the fact that he has not been honored is not a reflection of his legacy, but a damning indictment of the system that claims to celebrate it. Perhaps the most fitting tribute to Bam Bigelow is not a bronze statue or a plaque, but the undying respect of the fans who saw his fire, witnessed his artistry, and remember him not as a statistic, but as a sports entertainment masterpiece. May he rest in peace. The date is April 5, 1992, and the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis pulses with an electric current generated by over 62,000 souls. The air is thick with anticipation, a visceral hum that reverberates through the very foundations of the arena. Inside the squared circle, a drama of Shakespearean proportions is unfolding. Macho Man Randy Savage, a man whose career has already etched itself into the annals of professional wrestling as legendary, stands at a precipice. His opponent, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, embodies everything Savage has fought against in recent months: arrogance, deceit, and a malicious intent to smear the reputation of Miss Elizabeth, the woman Savage holds dearest. When the final bell tolls, the roar of the crowd is deafening. Savage, his face a mask of triumph and vindication, has pinned Ric Flair. He raises the championship belt high above his head, a gleaming testament to his prowess, his resilience, and his unwavering love. The celebratory fireworks explode as Savage embraces Elizabeth, the picture of a true champion, a hero redeemed. He is back on top, at the pinnacle of glory, bathed in the adulation of a stadium full of screaming fans. This should have been the dawn of a new era, the triumphant return of the Macho Man to the very summit of sports entertainment, a reign that would cement his legacy even further. Yet just over 2 years later, Randy Savage would be gone from the World Wrestling Federation. Not just gone, but seemingly erased from the company he had so fundamentally shaped. His name, once synonymous with excellence and spectacle, would become a whisper, rarely spoken in the hallowed halls of Stamford, Connecticut. What happened? How could a figure so central, so vital to the Federation's golden age, vanish so completely, his very existence seemingly scrubbed from the official narrative? Why would Vince McMahon, the architect of this grand empire, seek to obliterate the memory of one of his most iconic stars? This is the story of Macho Man Randy Savage. The meteoric rise, the dazzling spectacle, the agonizing betrayal, and the enduring mystery of his seemingly intentional erasure from the annals of Federation history. To understand the bitter end, one must first comprehend the magnificent beginning. Randy Mario Poffo possessed an innate understanding of showmanship and an athletic prowess honed by a brief but impactful career in professional baseball. The son of Angelo Poffo, a wrestling veteran, Randy's destiny seemed always to lie within the ropes. He honed his craft in regional territories, most notably his father's International Championship Wrestling and the Continental Wrestling Association in Memphis. It was in these proving grounds that the Macho Man persona began to take shape, including the flamboyant attire, the growling intensity, and the gravelly soon-to-be iconic manner of speech. It was a character designed to grab attention, to demand it, and Randy Savage delivered, with a captivating blend of athletic dynamism and unhinged charisma. In 1985, the World Wrestling Federation, under the ambitious vision of Vince McMahon, was expanding nationally, hungry for magnetic talent. Savage, with his undeniable star power, was a natural fit. His debut was accompanied by a feverish bidding war storyline, with various managers vying for his services. He ultimately chose the elegant and enigmatic Miss Elizabeth as his manager, a decision that would forever intertwine their destinies and become the emotional core of his Federation narrative. Elizabeth, with her demure beauty and quiet strength, provided a perfect contrast to Savage's volatile intensity, creating a dynamic that transcended typical wrestling storylines and captivated audiences worldwide. Savage's ascent in the company was meteoric. He quickly established himself as a top-tier heel, an arrogant, unpredictable force of nature who wrestled with a savage fervor. His matches were masterpieces of athleticism and storytelling, and his interviews were hypnotic in their bizarre cadence. His feud with George the Animal Steele, centered around Steele's infatuation with Miss Elizabeth, was an early highlight, showcasing Savage's ability to draw intense heat and elicit strong emotional responses from the crowd. He captured the Intercontinental Championship from Tito Santana, embarking on a legendary reign that culminated in an iconic clash with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at WrestleMania 3 in 1987, a match widely regarded as one of the greatest in wrestling history. Their intricate, fast-paced encounter, a symphony of perfectly executed maneuvers, solidified Savage's reputation as an elite in-ring performer. But it was his alliance and subsequent implosion with Hulk Hogan that truly defined Savage's initial run as a main event player. The Mega Powers, formed in a moment of crisis at the main event in 1987, saw Hogan and Savage unite against a common foe. This tag team, featuring the two biggest stars in the company, was an unprecedented phenomenon. Yet beneath the surface of their glorious success, a slow-burning jealousy festered, fueled by Savage's increasing paranoia about Hogan's perceived wandering eye towards Miss Elizabeth. This angle blurred the lines between reality and kayfabe with unprecedented effectiveness, tapping into primal fears of betrayal and suspicion. The eventual breakup of the Mega Powers, culminating in their epic confrontation at WrestleMania 5, was not merely a wrestling match. It was a societal event, a dramatic narrative that had gripped millions. Savage, the spurned lover and paranoid genius, took on the role of the ultimate villain, while Hogan remained the all-American hero. After his feud with Hogan, Savage embraced his villainous side fully, crowning himself the Macho King and adopting Sensational Sherry as his new manager. His promos became even more unhinged, his attire more outlandish, and his matches more vicious. He challenged the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 7 in another critically acclaimed encounter. This match ended with Savage losing, but, in a surprisingly emotional turn, being reunited with Miss Elizabeth, sparking a genuine outpouring of affection from the audience. This marked his transition back to a beloved babyface, setting the stage for his next major storyline, and the very moment our story began. The road to WrestleMania 8 was paved with intrigue and personal attacks. Ric Flair, the arrogant Real World's champion, began to claim a sordid past with Miss Elizabeth, even presenting doctored photographs to support his outrageous assertions. This deeply personal attack struck Savage at his core, reigniting the protective fire within him and fueling a feud that was as much about honor and love as it was about championship gold. The narrative built to a crescendo, culminating in that triumphant night in Indianapolis, where Savage not only reclaimed the championship, but also vindicated Elizabeth's honor and his own. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated heroism, a feel-good victory that resonated deeply with fans. For many, this should have been the rebirth of Macho Man's career in the 1990s. He was a seasoned veteran, still at the top of his game athletically, a proven draw and a beloved figure. He had just emerged from a deeply personal and compelling storyline as a champion. He was, to all appearances, poised to lead the company into a new era. But Vince McMahon, ever the visionary, or perhaps the ruthless pragmatist, had other plans. The slow exile began almost imperceptibly. By late 1992 and into 1993, Randy Savage's in-ring appearances began to diminish. Vince McMahon, always looking to the future, had begun to focus his creative energies on a new generation of stars, including Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and the heavily pushed Lex Luger. Savage, despite his undeniable drawing power, was slowly transitioned away from active competition and into a role at the commentary booth. While Savage was undeniably gifted on the microphone and brought a unique, frenetic energy to the broadcast table, it was clear that his true passion lay between the ropes. He wanted to wrestle. He believed he still had years of main event performances left in him. Sitting behind a table and calling matches rather than competing in them was a frustration that simmered beneath his always intense exterior. The tension was building, a silent but potent rift forming between the perfectionist, obsessive Savage and his increasingly distant employer. The betrayal, in Vince McMahon's eyes, arrived in the fall of 1994. Randy Savage left the World Wrestling Federation and soon resurfaced in World Championship Wrestling, the federation's direct competitor, making a dramatic debut that immediately elevated the rival promotion. For Vince McMahon, this was not merely another wrestler jumping ship. Savage was different. He wasn't just an employee, he was family. He was one of the foundational pillars of the Federation's golden age, a key architect of its greatest storylines, a man who had bled and sweat and poured his entire being into the company. His departure to the competition, especially during the burgeoning Monday Night Wars, was perceived as the ultimate act of disloyalty, a personal affront that went beyond mere business. The contrast between Savage's perceived diminished role in the Federation and his thriving career in WCW only exacerbated the perceived insult. Alongside his old rival Hulk Hogan, Savage found renewed vigor, participating in high-profile storylines, capturing multiple championships, and proving that his main event days were far from over. He became a crucial component of his new employer's success during the Monday Night Wars, inadvertently twisting the knife deeper into Vince McMahon's wounded pride. The damage to their relationship was permanent, an unbridgeable chasm formed by what McMahon surely viewed as a heinous act of infidelity. But there was another layer, a far darker and more insidious set of circumstances that became inextricably linked to Savage's exile and subsequent erasure. Over the years, whispers turned into rumors. Dark, unverified stories claiming Savage had crossed an unthinkable line. The most infamous of these involved Stephanie McMahon, Vince's daughter, who was significantly younger than Savage. The rumor, which gained currency in the shadowy corners of the wrestling world, suggested an inappropriate romantic involvement. Nothing was ever proven. Nothing credible was ever presented. It remained, and still remains, entirely unsubstantiated gossip. But in wrestling circles, the rumor became legend, a persistent, uncomfortable undercurrent. Whether true or not, whether a baseless fabrication or a twisted kernel of truth, it became one more reason fans and industry insiders believed Vince McMahon would never forgive him. It added a profoundly personal, deeply disturbing dimension to the narrative of betrayal. Unlike other prominent stars who had left the Federation and later returned, including Hulk Hogan and even Bret Hart, who suffered a far more public and egregious slight, Randy Savage was never brought back into the fold. There was no reconciliation, no Hall of Fame induction while he was alive, no nostalgic appearances. His name was almost never mentioned on Federation programming throughout the Attitude Era and beyond, a period when the company was constantly mining its rich history for content. For over a decade, it was as if Macho Man never existed within the official narrative of the company he had helped build. His iconic matches, his groundbreaking interviews, and his unforgettable character work all seemed to be relegated to a silent, unacknowledged past. This deliberate silence, this systematic exclusion, spoke volumes. It cemented the idea that Vince McMahon's unforgiveness ran deep, fueled by both the professional slight of his jump to WCW and the insidious personal rumors. Randy Poffo lived a relatively quiet life in Florida in his later years, far from the spotlight he once commanded with such ferocity. He married his old love, Lynn Payne, a woman who brought him peace and stability. But on May 20th, 2011, while driving with Lynn, Randy Savage suffered a sudden cardiac event and lost control of his vehicle, colliding with a tree. He died at the age of 58. The news sent shockwaves through the wrestling world, a tragic end to a life lived so intensely. It was only after his death, 4 years later, that WWE finally relented. In 2015, Randy Savage was posthumously inducted into the company's Hall of Fame. His brother Lanny accepted the honor on his behalf. While a welcome recognition for fans and a long overdue tribute to one of wrestling's true icons, it was a bittersweet moment. Vince McMahon was present, but the reconciliation never happened in person. Savage never got to hear the cheers one last time, never stood on that stage to accept the accolades from the company he had given so much to. For many, this posthumous induction, devoid of any live reconciliation, was further proof that Vince McMahon never truly forgave the betrayal, both professional and rumored personal. It was an act of recognition perhaps, but not necessarily an act of forgiveness. Macho Man Randy Savage was brilliance and chaos bound in one man. A revolutionary performer whose paranoia and perfectionism became both his fuel and his curse. His career is marked by betrayal, rumor, and a strange exile that seemed to erase him from wrestling's memory. Yet in the end, the legend proved unerasable. Savage was not forgotten. He was immortalized, and perhaps that, in the end, was the truest madness of all. The date is January 15th, 1989, and the venue is the Houston Summit. A cauldron of anticipation, crackling with an energy only professional wrestling can ignite. Tonight, history will be made. 30 titans of the squared circle will converge in a no-holds-barred, every man for himself free-for-all. The Royal Rumble, and amidst this pantheon of gladiators, one man, a legend forged in the fires of countless battles, stands poised to etch his name deeper into the annals of World Wrestling Federation lore. The Royal Rumble match itself is a maelstrom of humanity. The ring, a canvas for chaos, sees alliances form and shatter, betrayals unfold, and Herculean efforts culminate in agonizing eliminations. Hulk Hogan, the undisputed face of the company, enters at number 18, unleashing a torrent of eliminations that showcase his unparalleled power and popularity. Yet even the seemingly invincible Hogan falls victim to the cunning tactics of the Twin Towers. The ring, once a crowded battlefield, begins to thin, the fallen giants and forgotten warriors littering the ringside area. Then, at number 27, Big John Studd makes his grand entrance. As he lumbers towards the ring, a collective gasp ripples through the assembled masses. He is an anachronism, a colossal throwback to a bygone era of brute strength and unadorned power. At 6 feet 10 inches and weighing in at a staggering 364 pounds, Studd is a monolith, a walking mountain of muscle and defiance. His face, etched with the scars of 1,000 wars, carries a stoic intensity that bespeaks a lifetime spent in the crucible of combat. He isn't flashy, he is simply and unequivocally a giant. He quickly makes his intentions clear, engaging Akeem, the African Dream, in a clash of titans. The ring, groaning under their combined weight, seems to shrink. As the clock ticks down and the final entrant, the $1 Million Man, buys his way in at number 30, the stakes escalate. Shortly thereafter, in a moment that epitomizes the ruthless nature of the contest, the $1 Million Man and Akeem, briefly united in their desire to eliminate Studd, ruin their chance. Studd, ever the opportunist, seizes the moment, dumping the gargantuan Akeem over the top rope, leaving him and the $1 Million Man as the final two. Studd, with a surge of adrenaline and raw power, slams him into the canvas. A butterfly suplex follows, a testament to Studd's deceptive agility despite his immense size. Then, following a thunderous clothesline, he hoists the $1 Million Man over the top rope, sending him crashing to the floor below. The arena erupts. Big John Studd, the forgotten giant, had triumphed. He stood alone in the center of the ring, arms raised in victory, the last man standing in the first ever 30-man Royal Rumble. It was a moment of profound vindication, a powerful declaration that his time at the top was far from over. This victory solidified his status as one of the Federation's most legendary titans, a testament to his enduring power and the respect he commanded. It felt like the beginning of a magnificent new chapter for the towering competitor. Yet less than 6 months later, in June of 1989, Big John Studd would be gone from the company. A fleeting moment of glory, a spectacular resurgence, only to vanish into the ether, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. How could a man who had just conquered in a battle of the toughest individuals in professional wrestling simply disappear? Why would Vince McMahon, the architect of this grand spectacle, discard a legend at the height of his improbable comeback? The answer, quite simply, is money, a familiar theme in the cutthroat world of professional wrestling, and a pivot in vision that left little room for the giants of yesteryear. To understand the curious case of Big John Studd's meteoric rise and precipitous fall, we must journey back to his beginnings, to the roots of the man who would become synonymous with the word giant. Born John William Minton, his immense size was evident from an early age. He was a natural athlete, excelling in basketball before joining the United States Army, serving as a military police officer in Vietnam. But the allure of the squared circle would ultimately draw him in. Trained by the legendary Killer Kowalski, Minton debuted in 1972 as the Mighty Minton for Hollywood Wrestling. His early career saw him form a formidable tag team with superstar Billy Graham. His size and raw power were undeniable, and it wasn't long before the Worldwide Wrestling Federation took notice. He joined the federation as Chuck O'Connor, even challenging Pedro Morales for the World Heavyweight Championship. His journey through the territorial system saw him hone his craft, adopting various personas and collecting championships along the way. In Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, he found a new identity, given to him by promoter Paul Bosch, who, upon seeing his sheer size, labeled him a stud. Thus, Big John Studd was born. He tasted tag team gold with Ken Patera and even performed as the masked superstar number 2 before unmasking. Studd made a return to the Federation in 1976, this time donning a mask as Executioner number 2, teaming with Executioner number 1 to capture the World Tag Team Championship. This reign, however, was short-lived, as a third Executioner interfered in a title defense, leading to them being stripped of the belts. He departed again in early 1977, continuing his travels, including a stint in the American Wrestling Association, where he feuded with legends like Mad Dog Vachon and The Crusher. These early years were his apprenticeship, a period of refining his character and solidifying his reputation. But it was his return to the World Wrestling Federation in late 1982 that truly cemented his legacy. This was the era of expansion, the dawn of a new national phenomenon, and Studd arrived as a monster heel, managed by the infamous classy Freddie Blassie. His gimmick was simple yet terrifying. He would bring a stretcher to the ring, promising to beat his opponents so severely that they would be carried out on it. This immediately established him as a dominant force and would set the stage for the feud that would define his career. The rivalry with Andre the Giant was not merely a wrestling storyline, it was a clash of mythic proportions. Both men were titans, legitimate giants, and the question of which of the two was the superior giant captivated audiences. The rivalry culminated at the inaugural WrestleMania in March 1985. The $15,000 Body Slam Challenge carried an added stipulation. If Andre failed to slam Studd, he would be forced to retire. In a moment etched forever in the memories of wrestling fans, Andre definitively slammed Studd, securing a monumental victory and cementing his own legendary status. Despite the loss, Studd remained a prominent figure, forming an alliance with fellow Heenan family member King Kong Bundy. They continued their feud with Andre. The Machine storyline in 1986, where Andre donned a mask as the Giant Machine to circumvent a storyline suspension, saw Studd, Bundy, and Heenan vehemently trying to unmask him, adding another layer of intrigue. Studd even participated in the memorable Battle Royal at WrestleMania 2 alongside professional football players. This run in the Federation ultimately concluded in November 1986, as he stepped away from wrestling to pursue acting opportunities, leaving a significant void in the roster of giants. His return to the company in December 1988 was met with considerable excitement. Appearing on the Brother Love show, Studd announced his comeback. An eager Bobby Heenan, still managing Andre the Giant, attempted to welcome Studd back into the Heenan family. However, in a surprising turn of events, Studd rejected the offer, running Heenan off the set and turning face, aligning himself with the fans. This set the stage for a brief but compelling feud with the Heenan family. This brings us back to the Royal Rumble of 1989. His victory was not just a personal triumph, it was a symbolic passing of the torch. A moment where an established veteran, one of the foundational giants of the Federation, proved he could still stand tall amidst a new generation of superstars. It was a feel-good story, a testament to perseverance and the enduring power of a true legend. The subsequent appointment as special guest referee for the WrestleMania 5 match between Jake Roberts and Andre the Giant further indicated his importance to the company. It seemed Big John Studd was back and here to stay, but the winds of change were blowing through the Federation, and they were gale force. By 1989, Vince McMahon was actively pivoting away from the giant versus giant attractions that had defined the early to mid-80s. Andre the Giant, though still revered, was breaking down physically due to his acromegaly. Studd, a veteran of the territorial days, simply didn't fit the new mold. McMahon was cultivating a new breed of stars, the high-octane charisma of Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, the explosive power of the Ultimate Warrior, and the colorful, heavily merchandised stars that would define the golden era. Studd's style, while powerful and effective, was a throwback. The new federation demanded faster-paced action, more theatricality, and a focus on younger, fresher talent that could carry the company into the next decade. While his Royal Rumble win was a moment of glory, it was ultimately an anomaly, a final hurrah rather than a new beginning. Younger big men like the Big Boss Man were already being groomed for prominent roles, and the company's resources and creative energy were being poured into the meteoric rise of the Ultimate Warrior. Studd, despite his immense talent and undeniable presence, was increasingly seen as an 80s relic, a giant from a bygone era. The official reason for his departure in June 1989 was a financial dispute with Vince McMahon. It's a familiar refrain in the history of professional wrestling. Studd, having just won the Royal Rumble, likely felt he deserved a higher pay grade, a compensation commensurate with his legendary status and recent triumph. McMahon, however, with his sights set on a new direction and a new crop of stars, was unwilling to meet his asking price. In McMahon's eyes, Studd was becoming expendable. He was moving on, evolving the product, and Studd, for all his accomplishments, didn't fit the emerging blueprint. After his departure, Studd wrestled sporadically on the independent circuit. His health, however, was in decline. In October 1993, after a match, he collapsed due to low stamina, a grim sign of what was to come. He was battling cancer. John William Minton, Big John Studd, passed away on March 20, 1995, after a battle with liver cancer and Hodgkin's disease. His posthumous induction into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004 served as a rightful acknowledgement of his indelible impact on professional wrestling. Big John Studd's story is a poignant one, a testament to the brutal realities of a constantly evolving industry. He was a true legend, a larger-than-life figure who commanded respect and instilled fear in the hearts of his opponents. His Royal Rumble victory was a glorious, fleeting moment of triumph, a final roar from a wrestling titan. But in the ruthless world of Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation, where innovation and evolution were paramount, even the most legendary giants could be deemed obsolete. It was the end of an era, a bittersweet closing chapter for one of professional wrestling's most compelling and colossal figures. May he rest in peace.